So President Trump signed a law in mid-November that required the Department of Justice to release all the Epstein files by midnight on Friday, December 19th. The deadline was set by the law that the president signed and that Congress had passed. Department of Justice is saying we may not get all the files released by midnight on December 19th. We may be handing out files over the next several weeks, and that's certainly contrary to what the law required. The problem is the law didn't have any enforcement teeth in it. There was nothing in the law that said, if that doesn't happen by midnight on December 19th, this is the penalty, this is the punishment. So they're not required to release a list of what they're not releasing. And that's where the problems arise. And that's where the suspicion would continue to grow, because we don't know what we don't know about the documents that were kept back. And so it's up to the Department of Justice. It's basically the honor system saying, okay, these materials relate to victims, so they're kept back. These materials relate to ongoing prosecution, so they're kept back. But again, it's up to the people who are making those decisions to say whether or not those exceptions follow the law. So it's not going to reassure a lot of people that this has been done scrupulously and appropriately, because there's going to be so much material that's not being released, so much material that's redacted, that it's certainly going to feed suspicions that something's going on. But on the other hand, there's not much that the Congress can do to enforce this. Now, there have been claims and reports that some members of Congress want to initiate impeachment proceedings against the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, in the case that there's material that should be released that hasn't been released. That's really the only teeth available to Congress if the law is not complied with. So when it comes down to it, the idea that this is bipartisan may go by the wayside, because you've got, well, Epstein certainly associated with both prominent Democrats and prominent Republicans, including ex-presidents like Bill Clinton and current presidents like Donald Trump. If it becomes a partisan issue, that's certainly going to raise suspicions that materials not being released, materials being withheld, and the basis for that is not protecting victims' names. The basis for it is protecting the reputations of prominent people in both parties. Right. Well, part of the law also establishes that redactions can't be made for the purposes of sparing people embarrassment. That's one of the key elements of the law. It was explicit in the law that Congress passed and that the president signed. So the Department of Justice cannot use reputational harm or embarrassment as a basis for redacting any material. The problem with redactions, it's one thing to look at a page that comes from the DOJ files and you see a name blanked out or two names blanked out. But when you see page after page of dark lines where there's nothing communicated on that page except the redaction, it does raise questions about, it's one thing to redact names, it's one thing to redact victim identities. It's another thing when the material that you're looking at has been blacked out to the point where it's useless because it doesn't have any information on it whatsoever. So there are always going to be arguments about what was redacted. There's always going to be suspicion, especially around the Epstein case, especially around any big document dump that includes nothing but blacked out pages, because that's not going to look like it's transparent. It's going to look like somebody's trying to hide something.